Boy, do I have a treat. Do I have a treat for all of you history buffs in Hansford County? I had to write down notes. This episode is the best yet, in my opinion. Um, this is George interviewing the Hansford County Historical Society. I wish I knew the date. I don't know the date. They didn't say the date, or I must have missed it if they did. This would be Tom Jones, Clementine Renner, Gertie Archer, and Olin Sheets being interviewed all at once. Subjects of discussion: the purpose of the Hansford County Historical Commission. It's called the Commission today. It was called the Hansford County Historical Society then. It was founded in 1963. Today, it is chaired by Dorothy Cater from Groover, and members include folks like Mike Ralston, my wife Holly Jarvis Whitaker, Jenna Gillespie, Paige Pittman Bergen. That's just to name a few that I know are on there. I think Don Mays is still on there. But so they're talking about the purpose of the Historical Society and what it does, how it serves the community, serves the county. And then they start talking about the gun pits. Okay, this is a story that goes back to the days of Custer, where you had Kit Carson and General Custer and General Evans and some others with the U.S. Army running around trying to round up Comanches. And these gun pits have been a legend around Hansford County lore since I've never not known them to not be legend. It's been something that's been talked about my entire life. Of course, adobe walls gets discussed. Gertie Archer goes into the early days of her family settling in Hansford County. I'm having to read my notes here. Sorry. Clementine, this is gold. Clementine pitches the museum in this. So this is pre-museum. This is probably right around 1970, or it could be in the 60s, where Clementine Renner is making a pitch to the community, to the listeners, that, hey, we need a museum in Hansford County. And that's fantastic. The Newcomb or New Hope Cemetery, I know it as the New Hope Cemetery, but they're calling it the Newcomb Cemetery, that is out in North Hansford County, off of County Road F. It's on Brillhart property out there, County Road F and Powder Creek, which is, almost to the Oklahoma state line. If any of you know where the Knutson Ranch is, where Paul Stavlo's place is, it's kind of out by there. But it's directly north of the dam on Brillhart property. Fantastic episode. I'm sorry to go on and on. I will get to it right away. Have a great one. And I want to do this. I want to start getting together with some of our seasoned citizens in Hansford County, some of our folks that have been around, and I want to start getting their stories too. We need to keep this going. So send me an email, journeys@hansfordheritage.com, if you have ideas about that. Have a good day.
Hey, today's lunch would be a good place or a good time to stop at Hopper's Drive-In, Highway 207 South in Spearman. They're our sponsors for Spearman Information this morning, and we have quite a crowd here this morning. We've got several fine people of our community here to talk about the history of the Panhandle, and more specifically, the history of Hansford County. Tom Jones is the chairman of the Hansford County Historical Society. He is with us this morning. And Clementine Renner, Mrs. Gus Renner, is the Secretary of Treasury. She's here this morning. And Gertie Archer, the Vice President, is with us. Also, Olin Sheets. Olin is an officer in this Hansford County Historical Society and one of the researchers of the society, or for the society. We're going to be talking about many great things that have happened in the history of this part of the country, some that we feel that you're going to find very, very interesting, and maybe some things that you didn't know about. We'll be back to talk with these fine people right after this word from Hopper's Drive-In. Tom Jones is the chairman or president, if you will, of the Hansford County Historical Society. Tom, let's ask you first of all how long you have served in this capacity. How long have you been the president of the society?
Since 1963, January 25th.
Well, that's quite a lengthy service, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to go to Clementine now, because Clementine, you've got some information concerning the forming of the society and so forth. Let's just let you tell us what you have there.
Well, the Hansford County Historical Survey Committee was formed, as Tom said, on January the 25th, 1963. And the members were appointed by Judge Johnny Lee. And they were Gwenford Lackey, Josie Hayes of happy memory, Mrs. Bob Archer, Tom Jones, Olin Sheets, Lee McClellan, and myself. We were to serve for 2 years. And later, Mrs. P.A. Lyon, Mrs. J.R. Kime, and Gordon Stedgy were appointed. But we're still at it. So it's been a long 2 years.
I started saying there's been some continuation there.
That's right. And the officers appointed at that time were Tom Jones, president, Mrs. Archer, vice president, and myself, Clementine Renner, secretary-treasurer.
Clementine, let's just quickly summarize the purpose of the committee, why it was organized, and what was intended to do with this Hansford County Historical Committee.
Well, Hansford County is just one of 254 counties in the state that each and every county was asked to set these up so that we could preserve our heritage, let the world know what each and every county in the state has of historical interest.
What are some of the things that you have done, or that the committee has done, since being founded in 1963?
Well, we first put up a marker. It was a granite marker, as probably all of you know, down in the around Old Hansford. It was the Dodge City Tascosa Trail. And if you will look to the south, a little bit southwest of this marker, you can still see the old road, the ruts, you know, that were made by the wagons that made this trail.
Now, this trail was a cattle trail, and also it was a pioneer trail, wasn't it?
That's right, it was both. And then after that, we put up a spearman marker. That is, we got the history of spearmen. We have that. And the Farwell marker. And then there's the courthouse marker. We have a cemetery marker. And we have moved the Cater marker from its original location down to the road on 136 south of Groover. And do we have a Zulu marker? We put up a Zulu marker. That was the first, I guess, post office north of the Canadian River, was it not?
Where was it located? Do you remember?
Well, it's what is now the Hawkins place.
Oh.
Jeff Hawkins, I guess, and his sister own it.
So you have been very active in the 10 years.
And we also have one for that neat whale.
Oh yeah, that Farwell marker. It depicts the town as it was in those days. It seems like that was the first town in Hansford County, but they wanted to be the county seat. Well, even away back there, we had competition for the county seat. And they had a vote, and Old Hansford won out. So Old Hansford was the county seat from then on.
Until it was disbanded and they moved. I guess people from Old Hansford moved into Spearman and Groover, didn't they?
Well, they moved into Spearman because Groover was not there.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay, I'm a newcomer.
No, Groover wasn't.
Zulu was the first post office.
Yeah, Zulu was the first post office north of the Canadian River.
Okay. Tom, let's talk to you for a moment here and find out a little bit about the history of this country as you remember it. Now, we won't tell anyone how old you are, but I'm sure that you've been around Hansford County for several years and probably have a great deal of information that the average individual might not know. Why don't you just kind of elaborate on some of the things that have happened in the past?
Well, Zulu post offices at first, as Clementine said, in Mulock Post Office.
Which post office was that?
Mulock, which
Mulock.
north and a little east of Spearman here on the Palador
I
Creek.
see.
Most of this is the early days they settled on the creeks. And we had rifle pits out north of Spearman, north and east ended. So
Yes.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the rifle pits? What actually are those rifle pits?
well, General Carr was coming in to meet Custer. Am I right on that? And they got down to north of Spearman here and got into a snowstorm. And they stayed there all winter. And they run out of food. And there was several lives, I think. They got sick.
Mm-hmm. And so did they dig the rifle pits out there?
Yes, sir. And later, well, there's a sheep camp out there.
I see.
And they still have those places where
Those old rifle pits. It can
the rifle pit, where they was washed out, the water come in and washed it out. But some of the sheep camps are still there.
Has this area been preserved for historical purposes? It actually, you can't get out there to it.
No,
Not, or at least
It's-
not by automobile.
well, you can, but it's kind of roundabout way.
Okay. You know, Tom mentioned General Carr and General Custer, and I was visiting with Olin Sheets prior to our program. Olin, you've got some very interesting facts about these two famous generals and about Colonel Evans. Let's talk to you a little bit and just have you tell our listeners what you told me about the early days when the Kiowa Indians and the Comanche Indians roamed this country up here.
Well, it seemed, George, that the Indians had been outwitting the U.S. troops. In other words, the Indians would play hide-and-go-seek with them. And the government proposed to do some winter campaigning, strike them in winter camps.
When they couldn't move quite
Yes.
as well.
And so they sent General Carr from Fort Lyon, Colorado. And Colonel Evans was to march from Fort Bascom, New Mexico. And General Custer was coming from Fort Supply. And they were to meet somewhere in this vicinity, mostly on the Canadian. And then they were going to, that was to be their supply depot. And then they were to strike these Indians in the winter camps. Well, General Carr got as far as the Palador up here, and as Tom said, a snowstorm hit them, and they went into camp. And they never did move camp until spring.
Hmm.
And Colonel Evans made his march down the Canadian River on the Fort Bascom Trail. Well, he went to this designated place. Neither Carr nor Custer was there. General Custer, he had gone from Fort Supply, and he heard of Black Kettle being in camp on Washita River near Cheyenne, Oklahoma. Well, he wanted to gain some glory, so he attacked this camp. It was mostly old men, women, and a few young warriors. And that's where you get the Custer Massacre. He was supposed to meet Colonel Evans and General Carr on the Canadian, and near the old Obi Walls.
Down somewhere around where the Kiowa River was.
Well, on the Canadian, on the Canadians, South Canadians,
Yeah.
which would be about 25 miles south of here.
But he was far to the east of that,
Yes.
wasn't he?
But the Indians, they found out the Indians weren't camped on the Canadian where like they usually were. They could see a hard winter coming on, and they had gone farther south. And so General Carr's campaign didn't amount to much. They went in the spring. They went to the Canadian where he was supposed to meet General Evans, and they made a sachet on the South Plains, but they never did strike many Indians.
Olin, do you have any idea how long ago this was?
Well, when Carr made this camp on Paladura, it was the winter of 1858 and 59.
So that's quite a while ago.
They got there in December of 1889.
And I'm sure that there's been quite a few changes in this area since that time, but a lot of history still remains.
Oh, yes, it sure is.
I'd like to ask anyone who would like to comment about the adobe walls. I've been curious about this area and specifically about adobe walls. Who can tell me a little bit of the history of this fort? I understand that it was a United States cavalry fort at one time. Do you, Olin, do you have any information there?
There's two adobe wall sites. The first adobe walls was right on the river. It was a trading post. The Bent brothers from the Arkansas established this fort to trade with the southern Indians, so they wouldn't have to bring their fur and pelts all the way to the Arkansas. And it was established in about 1842 or 4, the best we can figure. And it remained in operation possibly 8 or 10 years. And then it was abandoned. Well, then the second adobe walls was a mile and a half north of this old site, which was the site where the buffalo hunters established their camp. And that was 1873, I believe. And that's when those 5 tribes attacked them and tried to wipe them out. But they didn't quite do it because they were in behind those adobe walls and logs, green cottonwood logs, and they wouldn't set a fire, you see.
They couldn't burn them out anyway, could they?
That's right.
Let's go back
There's
and talk.
2 brothers over in there that were in the wagon.
Oh, yes, there were several people killed there, all right.
They killed both of those.
At the adobe walls, buffalo hunters fight.
I see. Let's go back to Clementine. Clementine, do you have some other information there on what the society or what the committee has been doing, or some things that you wanted to bring out?
Well, I didn't mention the Bob Martin marker that we have at the courthouse. He was the sheriff at that time and was slain while in duty, on duty.
Do you know how long ago this was?
Oh,
I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, I can't say. Maybe
We have the
some,
dates on it.
about 1911 or 12, Olin says. And, well, besides that, we have, well, when the amphitheater was at its beginning in the Paladura Canyon south of Amarillo, there was a student contest on over these northern counties. And the one, they were to draw something that they would like to put on the facade of the Paladura amphitheater. Well, we entered that contest, and a boy attending the Groover School, but from Morse, his last name was Kelly. I can't think of his first name. But anyway, he won the contest, and his drawing then was accepted to be placed down there, and it is down there, and to my way of thinking, it's one of the most beautiful down there. It has more to it. I mean, there's more drawing, and really, they had quite a time getting it fixed, because it did have details that the rest of the plaques did not have.
that's really something.
Took about 3 years, didn't it?
I think so.
About 3 years to paint it,
Well, they
No,
don't paint it.
or 3 years to get it up, get it set up.
No, he wasn't, I don't think the
Cut it in
California,
stone.
he wasn't too long drawing it. He's just a natural artist.
Oh, okay. Gertie, let's talk to you for a moment. You're the vice president of the committee, and you've been in Hansford County for quite some time. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like, or what a youngster like myself would refer to as the good old days?
Well, I came here with my family in 1904 from Oklahoma, or Indian Territory at that time. And of course, there weren't very many people here. It's pretty scarce, and all this country was open.
You kind of helped to settle this
Yes.
part of the country.
The people who would move in usually just fenced their little section of land or two, whatever they had out, and the rest of it was all open and open range, and a lot of cattle and horses were running all over the country.
What were some of the hardships that your family had to face when you first came up to this part of the country?
Well, there's a lot of things that we didn't have, but we didn't really consider it a hardship. Everybody adjusted mighty well. Of course, the water was kind of deep, and we had to haul water for a while until we had our well completed.
Was there a lot of firewood around the country at that time? I know that there aren't too many areas where you can find firewood in this part of the country
Well,
anymore.
it was plentiful down in the breaks, or down along the creeks and all. If you'd go get it, ranchers didn't object to you getting the dead wood.
Yeah.
It was down there, but then we always had plenty of wood.
Well, that was a pretty long haul, though, to go down to the breaks and haul firewood up. Do you have any recollection of how long it used to take for, say, your dad, or I imagine that Bob Archer, your deceased husband, he probably even had a pretty good hand at hauling firewood.
Yes, it wasn't very much of a job. We'd go get it, but when if we burned coal, why, we had to freight that from Guyman or Texoma or Channing.
And this took
somewhere.
a while, didn't it?
Yeah. When they'd haul their wheat
I
up there,
can-
they'd haul back supplies, coal.
I can see how it would. Well, I know there's been vast changes made in this area, but the Historical Society, Clementine, let's go back to you on this. Your main purpose is to restore some of these historical sites in our area, and to let the people know that these places are here for them to go and see and visit. Let's ask you first of all, where do you get the money to do all this? You being the treasurer, I imagine it's your job to come up with some funds every now and then to help pay for some of these projects.
Well, we have been real fortunate in that the Hansford County Commissioners have helped us with these markers.
A part of their budget has been set
Yes.
aside.
Each year, we have asked the commissioners to set aside money for this purpose. And if we don't use it, well, of course, it's not laid back for us. They just don't give it out. So we don't have really anything much in our treasury. But we just have high hopes of doing a lot of things. Especially would we like to get a museum for Hansford County.
I was just going to ask about it. Why don't you talk a little bit about a museum for our area?
Well, it would take a lot of planning, but it also would take money. And I really feel that if the public would know just how many things we could put in that museum for the children, even the children of today, don't know what a horse collar looks like or what it was for, or harness, or, well, some of them don't know anything about even a butter churn. So we would have all that, to put in it, not to
Now,
mention thousands of other things.
What I need to know is why you look directly at me when you say, I have to relate a story to you. I took my wife and my children, a little over a year ago, up to Garden City, Kansas. And we went through the museum there located at the park, and we came upon a strange-looking object that had no nameplate on it, no identification or anything, and my wife asked me if I knew what it was. And I said I didn't have the slightest idea. And she has not let me live that down as yet, because as a young girl, it was her chore and her job to clean and service and work on their family cream separator, and I didn't even know what a cream separator was.
Oh, no.
Now this is sad but true. Here I am in my mid-30s, and I know that there are many, many younger people that don't realize what these things are and what role they played in our heritage. You know, my parents and grandparents must have used these items, but I don't remember it. My wife's parents and grandparents used these things vociferously, and she had a big part in it. But I wasn't a country boy as such. I was born and raised in town. But anyway, I thought that it was strange that a person like myself didn't even know what a cream separator was. And I like history. I enjoy looking into the past, but I think that a museum located in our area would give our young people, like you said, more especially our young people, an opportunity to see where their heritage came from and what it was really all about. Give them an idea of what it was like many years ago when their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents first came to this area and settled. Some of the things they had to do. You know, it's nothing to get into an automobile today and drive wherever you want to go. But if you look to the right and to the left of you, you kind of wonder, boy, how did they do it 100 years ago? How did they traverse this area? How did they survive? I think that a museum such as this would be of vast interest to our community. How could, let's look at it from the standpoint of a community project. Is there any way that the community could get involved, Clementine, in building a museum through contributions or whatever means?
Yeah, contributions would be great. Let somebody start the ball rolling and make a donation, and then add to that and work with maybe work with some of our local carpenters. They might, you know, help us. I'm not saying that they will, but it's just a thought.
Well, now, how would someone go about contributing to the historical committee for the purpose of building a museum, let's say?
Well, I haven't talked this over with anybody, but I'm sure that Johnny Lee would be glad to take any funds or any suggestions, and then we could work with him.
Has any research been done about a museum, how much it would cost or anything like this?
No, it really hasn't been, George. No, we haven't.
It's just a hope that the committee has right now, isn't it?
Yes, we have, maybe looked at several buildings that we thought we would try to use, but they're either too dilapidated or they say they're a fire hazard or something like that, and so we have really done nothing as to that. We just have high hopes. But maybe getting it out on the air and letting people know that there is an interest in it, that something will come of it.
Well, I certainly hope so, and we'll do everything we can to let all of you listeners know about the museum. Right now, what you need to do is see if you can get some people together and raise some funds specifically for the purpose of building or creating a museum in Hansford County. And Judge Johnny Lee probably would be the man to talk to about this, as Clementine said. We'll be back to talk more with these fine people connected with the Hansford County Historical Committee right after this message from Hopper's Drive-In.
A little louder.
All right, Tom Jones, we're going to talk with you for just a moment. I've just got to know, first of all, will you tell us how old you are?
Well, I'm kind of like Fairman McGee. I'm just 39.
39 and holding, right?
No, I'm 75 years old.
Okay, Tom, 75. How long have you lived in this area?
75, except about 10 years I went to school in Mexico.
But you've been here about 10 years, or about 65 years in all.
About all your life,
I've
haven't
been here all my life.
Oh, I see. You were born up in this country.
Yeah, I was born up here on the creek.
On the Paladura?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll be. Now, let's talk to you. Let's ask you a little bit about how those early days were. We've talked with the others about some of the things that took place back in the early days, but you can probably tell us more about it than anybody I know of. How was life back then? Tell us about some of the things that you faced.
Oh, I don't see. Of course, they have their convenience now, but then they wasn't too hard.
It didn't seem that way anyway,
No.
did it?
I didn't know any better, I guess.
What about what about how did you build your houses? Where did you get the lumber and everything to build homes up in this country?
Well, most of the houses in the early days was built at rock.
I see.
And then they had a sawmill over on the Canadian River, and they hauled some lumber and stuff from there on Morris Creek.
Well, where was this sawmill located?
Morris Creek,
Where it runs
on
into
the
the
Canadian River.
How did you transport the lumber?
Well, they used wagon teams.
How did you get back and forth to school when you were a youngster?
Oh, I rode horse.
How about courting the young damsels of the area?
Oh, I
How'd you go?
wasn't too much interested in that.
You had other
They
things.
were pretty.
You had other things to do.
They rode horses too.
Tom, do you have any idea how many people were up in this area when you were a youngster, as a young man growing up?
Oh, no, I don't.
Well, now you were here before Spearman became a town, weren't you?
Oh, yes, sir.
How about Old Hansford? Was it here when you were a young man, a young boy? Do you recall?
I was pretty small.
When Old Hansford was first built? Okay. Do you recall the railroads when they first came through the area?
Yes, sir.
When was this?
That was
1918.
1918, wasn't it?
That had to be a pretty
As the
exciting.
Santa Fe come through here at Spearman, and Old Hansford moved from up to Spearman.
Now, what about towns like Morse and, little communities like the Oslo community and Hardesty? Were these towns here then?
No,
This was pretty much a wilderness, wasn't it, at that time?
well, I wouldn't call it a wilderness.
How about the water? Hey, something else that just dawned on me. How about the water in the Paladura River at that time, Paladura Creek?
Well, they had plenty. They had just natural springs along in creek beds, and they'll probably run several miles and then come back up.
Are they still, are these springs still active?
Yes, sir.
They haven't dried up?
No,
How about fishing in the Paladura when you were a young man?
it was pretty good.
You caught some pretty good chow
Yeah,
out of there.
sure did.
What kind of fish did you usually catch?
Oh, catfish and bass, perch.
Let's ask you this, Tom. How did you make? What kind of livelihood did you have? How did you survive back in those days? Were you farming?
Well, no, it was mostly ranches. My father, when he come up here in 85, and settled on the claim up here, I was still living there. And he freighted from Dodge City.
What, drove
Yes, sir.
freight wagons?
Yes, sir.
And but you raised cattle, did you?
Yes, sir, they had cattle.
Well, now let's talk a little bit about how you got those things to market. I mean, you didn't have a feed yard then, and you certainly didn't have these big double-decker truck and trailer rigs.
Well, they drove them to market, I guess.
Were you ever involved in a roundup?
Oh, yes.
Let's talk a little bit about it. Where did you have a trail to follow or a set route that you could follow up to Dodge City?
Oh, yes.
This was the old Tascosa way.
Tascosa
Uh,
Trail.
How many guys did it usually take to, I guess they called them drovers back in those days, and probably still do. How many did it take to, say, drive a herd up to Dodge City?
Oh, it depend a lot on the size of it. I'd say 6 or 8, wouldn't you?
Six or eight cowboys to drive that herd.
And a lot of times they'd throw together, and I don't know whether they drove too much.
Well, now, you've done quite a bit of farming around this community, around this area, haven't you,
I
Tom?
tried to farm.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough effort on anybody anymore, but when did farming become a big industry up in this part of the country?
Well, I think most of them, they planted alfalfa along the creek.
This was when they were still
sub-irrigated.
This was still when cattle was a mainstay up here, wasn't
Yes,
it?
sir.
And when did they start planting, you might call them domestic or consumer crops like corn and wheat? You remember when that was?
It was in the 1900s.
Do you have any of those?
Early, I imagine, wasn't it, Olin? Or maybe Miss Archer.
Don't you think, Tom, when they first began raising wheat was 1919 when they started broke up so much land after
Yeah,
1919?
it started in
But there's quite a lot
1918.
before
Yeah, there
then
was quite a
that
lot, but
they-
not big farming
No.
until after 1919. And then 1929, there was another big boom.
So that's about when they started raising these types of crops.
Yes.
Tom, how big a family did you come from?
There was 3.
3 of you? Well, you had, what, a brother and a sister? Or?
There's two boys and a brother and a sister and myself.
So
I had one brother died when he was an infant.
you, with a small family like this, I imagine everybody stayed pretty busy back in those days, didn't they?
Yeah, when you could get us to work.
I imagine they didn't have too much trouble. Tom, it's been a real joy visiting with you, and Olin, with you, and Clementine and Gertie. We've just been tickled to death to have all of you here, and I wondered if there's anything any of you would like to add to the program. Okay, Clementine?
I would like to mention the fact that we have also marked the Civil War veterans' graves out here at the old Hansford Cemetery. And that, I thought that was a real good project.
In other words, they've been marked so that people can tell who the Civil War veterans were.
Yes, and among them were the W.T. Bowling and W.A. Baran and Henry Gibner and Jess Hancock. Those have been marked. And then there's one other thing. We have a real artist in our society, and that is none other than Winfred Lackey.
Say,
And everybody knows how well she does it, but maybe some of you don't know that she made the historical map for the placemats that we put out. And it was really something. And then the history of Hansford County is on the back side of it.
Clementine, do you have an office here in Spearman or somewhere around where you function from?
We meet in the courthouse in Judge Johnny Lee's office.
How often do you meet?
We meet the second Friday of each month.
Is this an open meeting that the public can
Oh,
attend?
yes, anybody that has any interest in it, we welcome them to come.
So the second Friday of each month you
That's
meet?
right.
Well, you've got a meeting coming up next week then, haven't you?
Is it next week? I don't know.
Either this week or next week.
No,
Well,
the
let's see.
second Friday.
Oh, the
you know,
second
it's-
Friday. Okay,
yes,
you've got
mhm.
about 3 weeks before your next meeting.
Yeah, at 1:30 in the afternoon.
1:30 in the afternoon at Judge Lee's chambers
That's
in the
right.
courthouse building. Well, we'll sure invite anybody to come up and visit with you and sit in and listen to your discussions and find out more about the Historical Society and also about how we can go about getting a museum located in our area. I think this would be something that everyone would be happy to have. I know I would. Can you think of anything else now that you'd like to add to our program?
Oh, yeah. Well, too, we sponsor the Old Timers Coffee, as we call it, at our Spearman celebration each year.
Oh, that's right.
That's our project, too. And we
Okay.
always enjoy that very much, meeting with old friends and discussing things that have happened in the past.
I imagine you get a lot of tips at a meeting like that, too, things that you can look into.
Well, yes, that's right.
This is something that I wanted to ask. If someone around our area knows of something that would be of historical value, can they contact any of you and tell you about it?
Yes, we'd be glad to.
I had a gentleman the other day ask me about a cemetery that I believe used to be located somewhere east of town or northeast of town, and this was back in the days, I believe, before the separation or the counties were boundary lines were set. I don't even suppose there was such a thing as Hansford County or Ochiltree County, but I understand that it's called the, I believe it's Black's Cemetery. Do you know anything about that?
I really don't. Do you, Olin?
Yes, it's about 9 miles east and probably a mile south of Spearman.
Is there any plans to restore the cemetery?
Not that I know of. However, it is on Bill Brown's farm, and the there's a little building there that some of the, I believe they vote there, or maybe they just have some community affairs there.
But actually-
it used to be a big schoolhouse.
But actually, this place is now located in Ochiltree County,
The
isn't it?
demonstration club
Yes,
was moved
it is
from
in
there.
Ockley County.
Okay,
And there's several graves there.
I see.
There's
there's
several old cemeteries scattered around over the county that
Have any of them been restored, or any of them been markers put up where people could tell that
yes,
that this was an old cemetery?
yes, there's one about 14 miles north on the creek that there's quite a few markers there, old settlers, and then there's quite a number of unmarked graves there. But
How do
it is fenced and kept in good shape.
Do you know the name of it? Or am I putting you on the spot
Newcomb.
there?
Last
Newcomb?
county is Newcomb Cemetery.
Do you know how to get up there to it? Which road leads?
Well, you have to come in from the east. You have to come on the county road and cross the creek at the G.C. Brillhart, right, and come in and go straight west from this crossing. It'll be a mile west of this crossing on the Paladur Creek on the county road northeast here.
So anybody out on a Sunday afternoon drive could drive up there.
You have to get in from the north and cross that creek.
But still, if if you're out roaming around the
Yes.
area on a Sunday afternoon, it'd be nice to stop in and
It is interesting.
stir some old memories or stir some imagination. Clementine?
In this particular cemetery that Olin is talking about, we found that there were two of the Newcomb children, and we all know Ernest Newcomb. He worked so long for the city. Well, it was his little brother and sister. They were buried there. One was in 1905 and the other one in 1906.
And this is at that Newcomb Cemetery.
Yes. And then there's Mrs. Cora Filia. She was a relative of the James family that were residents of this county. And there's one particular grave out there that is rather odd. On the tombstone, it just has Ralph Luke, U.S. Navy. We
You
don't.
haven't been able to find out anything about it?
We don't know anything about him. We don't know when he was born or when he died or anything.
Well, if anyone in our...
We think he was a veteran from World War I.
A Navy veteran.
Yes.
If anyone in our listening audience knows anything about Ralph Luke and this grave site at the Newcomb Cemetery, you can contact Tom Jones or Clementine Renner or Gertie Archer or Olin Sheets and let them know about it. Or any of the other members that we've talked about here of the Hansford County Historical Survey Committee. One other question, Clementine. Are you associated in any way with the National Historical Society?
No, really, I'm not. No.
This, well, the committee here was just organized by the county for the county. Is that right?
Well, maybe we are
Yeah, we're a member of the
in the-
historical.
of the state historical. Yes.
Of the State
Of
Historical
the State
Society.
Historical Society. Yes.
Well, I want to thank all of you very much for being our guest this morning. Do any of you have anything that you'd like to say in closing today? Except maybe tell the people to become more aware of your endeavors and help you in any way possible. And let's look forward to maybe getting some contributions going toward building a museum. This is something that we'd all, I think, really love to have. We've been visiting with Tom Jones, the president of the Hansford County Historical Survey Committee, and with Gertie Archer, the vice president, Clementine Renner, the secretary-treasurer, and with Olin Sheets, one of the researchers and officers of the society. We hope that you've enjoyed the program this morning. It's been brought your way by Hopper's A&W Drive-In on Highway 207 South right here in Spearman.